Nerds! Happy Sunday! It's the 25th, and today is the last Sunday of the month, which means book club. And so today we are talking about Code Name Verity by Elizabeth Wein. I'm so excited. I just realized as I was holding this up that the letters are cut off the edges of the cover.
Sad.
I don't know if that's on purpose or not. But we're talking about Code Name Verity, and it's going to be so fun. And so I guess we will start with our ratings of the book. It's been a really long time since I've had to host, or since I've gotten to host a book club. But we'll start with ratings. I believe I have Desiree on my far left.
I liked this book a lot more than I thought I was going to. I honestly didn't think I would like it because I don't like history. It's never been my favorite subject. But I'm gonna give this book like an 8 out of 10. Like it was really solid. Like I really liked it. I would read it again.
Whoa, pulling out the 10-point rating system.
We are not that fancy around here.
My next.
You are.
Okay. This is one of my favorite books ever. I actually reread it this week because it had been so long since I'd read it. But it's definitely it's a 5-star book for me. The first and second time reading it. It's amazing.
Kelly.
I listened to the audiobook this summer, and it was the fastest I had ever listened to an audiobook. Like I finished it in 3 days, I think, which is
Whoa.
Yeah, I couldn't stop. So 5 stars for me, no question. Although I am a big sucker for World War II YA books. So.
Me too.
Yeah. Same. It's a 5 from me as well. I love this book.
Or should we say a 10 out of 10?
A 10 out of 10 for me. I love best friend books, even though this one breaks my heart. And we got to meet Elizabeth Wein when we went to YALLFest, and she signed the book, and she's so nice, and she showed Emma her writing notebook, and the next project she was writing was like right there in front of her.
She handwrites her books, in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
In a really cool looking journal.
Yeah. Like a journal that looks like it would be full of secrets.
Because they are.
Because they are. I have questions. Feel free to also ask any questions. I believe instead of a comment section, now we have a comment chat sidebar thing. So feel free to ask any questions or make any comments in that sidebar with regards to Code Name Verity. I'm going to start with, whose point of view was your favorite to read?
Oh, it's so difficult. Like, I love Julie's voice. Like, I love all of her stuff just because I like her voice so much. And I like how she twists things. I don't know. I just really like her a lot. But I feel like both times I've read it, Maddie's section of the book has gone by faster for me. Like, I remember that from the first time, too, that I read through Julie's part really slowly. And then once I hit Maddie's part, it picked up really fast. And that happened again this time. So I don't know. They're both so good.
Yeah.
I feel like Julie's was more like exposition heavy though. Like there weren't a lot of conversations going on in her life at the time. There was a bit of but there were chunks that it was a bit of a slower read. I really liked her voice. I liked them both. I can't choose. I love them.
I like Maddie's better. Like I like Julie's, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, just I was able to read that part like a lot faster. So I don't know.
I think, and part of that is because like with Julie's, while like you don't know everything that's going to happen in her story, you know how her story ends. Like you know it ends with her being captured. Where like with Maddie, you don't know what's going to happen, so it goes by a lot faster.
Right.
And Maddie's also a bit more accessible. Like Julie's kind of intimidating as a person.
Yeah, I was like thinking about that like right before we got on, that like Maddie is like the more relatable character, I think. Like she's always like breaking down crying because she's just overwhelmed by everything. And I'm like, yeah, that'd probably be me. Let's be honest.
Yeah. That was one of the things I was actually going to bring up, is that like in thinking about which girl like I relate to more, it's like I want to be like, oh yeah, Julie all the way. But then when you like think of yourself actually in this situation, it's like, I don't know if I could be a Julie. It seems like there's very few people.
There's that.
Yeah. Yeah. Seems like there are very few Julies in the world.
Yeah, for real. Most of us are a Maddie.
Yeah. Which is still a very honorable thing to be. We're lucky to be Maddies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked Julie's voice for sure, because there's just like, she's so feisty, and like part of you is like, well, no, you're not a coward. Stop talking down on yourself. Why are you talking down on yourself so much? Are you trying to convince us of something? So I got caught up on like all of the underlined stuff. I would sit there for like 5 minutes at each underlined part. Like, why is this underlined? What does she want?
Underlined parts. There were underlined parts?
Julie underlines stuff a lot in hers. She'll like randomly underline like lines or letters or
See, there's this part here.
I have to
I'm gonna hold it up to my computer. So it says a Chanel cocktail dress for Engle. Red is Engle's color, and then it's circled. And so that's like the part that Engle circled or whatever, so you know that red is her color.
Yeah, so it's all stuff that Engle went through and did, like all the underlined stuff.
Yeah. I don't think I caught that the first time I read through it.
The first time
Engle was the one who did it.
Yeah. I remember the first time reading it, I was like, why is this stuff underlined?
Yeah. And like once I realized that all the underlined stuff was information about like the building, I was like, how is she getting away with this?
Yeah. And I was like, what is even her plan for it? She knows she's probably gonna die. Yeah. Yes.
One of the characters that I found really compelling was von Linden. Yeah, that's the name.
Yeah, he's such an interesting character.
Yeah. So like, he obviously gave her a very long time to tell her story, like really long.
Which he really didn't give him any good information.
Yeah. And so that part always felt like really fairy tale-ish to me, I guess. Like, like what's the story where she's like telling? Do you guys know what fairy tale?
Scheherazade? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
He calls her that. He calls her Scheherazade at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
really good connection.
He's an interesting like character because of like him and Julie like comparing the two of them. That like they have very similar jobs. Like they're both interrogators, but like they do it different ways. Like I don't know, it's interesting like the connection between like how they're kind of like two sides of the same coin, I guess. And how like at the end of Julie's part, like he gets that letter about like stop being merciful to her, basically. Like,
So do you think it was like that he saw himself in her, or was it like her storytelling, or some combination of all of them? Like, what do you think made him give her the time at first?
I think he was definitely like fascinated by her. You know, and I think it's like that connection between them that I think he like realized they were very similar people. Even though like he knew he was like much worse than her, but like because I mean he talks about towards the very beginning, like when she first tells the scene of Maddie and her meeting, and she just calls herself queen and she talks about herself in the third person, and Engle is like, you have to make her tell us about the time like when she met Brodat, like she hasn't told us about herself at all, and he's like, look, she's used foreshadowing and all these literary devices. Like I think he's like he just like enjoys it, I think, in like a weird sick way.
One of the things I found really interesting was that, like, we read Julie's story, and by the end of the book, we know that, like, a lot of the things she said weren't completely true, even if like the feeling of it was true.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, how well do we actually know her? Like, we know kind of how she felt, but we don't actually know that much about her personality or like likes and dislikes.
She's definitely an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how like she's just like, as you get through Maddie's part, you realize how clever Julie is. That like she basically gave the Nazis what they wanted, you know, like they showed her the pictures of the wireless sets and she was like, oh, here's 11 sets of code because I'm totally a wireless operator. And like,
Although I was very relieved to learn she wasn't any sort of traitor.
Yeah, just like so much relief when Maddie sees the picture and she's like, ha, ha, so funny. She'll know exactly what to do with that. Like, oh, thank goodness.
Or just like when it's like when Maddie crash lands and they fill the plane with all the sets and the French girl is like, 11 sets of wireless. How silly is that? And you're like, oh, good. They were real.
Did you guys find Engle's character to be like sympathetic? Like, how did you feel towards her throughout the course of the book?
That's hard because she's a very well-crafted character that like it was all written so nicely to make you feel everything.
And I definitely, at least this, and like I'd forgotten that she actually does give them information, like I didn't remember that, but I definitely like rereading Julie's part, I like felt like there was more to Engle, and then when I flipped through the end because I didn't have time to finish it, and I was like, oh, there is, like, even though I didn't remember it, I like knew, I was like, there's something with her, like, I don't know, the way she would sometimes treat her. You could tell, like, that just what like Julie told them, which is like, or what she told, I guess it was like the reporter, that like Engle was like softening, you know.
Right.
Yeah, the reporter part was cool too.
That was
it was all good.
It was way cool. I love like, I think that's one of the really clever things about this book is like you see Julie's perspective from inside the prison, and then you go to Maddie and you see it all from the outside, and it's like the exact same characters but seen in a completely different way. Like when you realize the French family is Thibaut's family, and like
that was a big moment for me. I don't know why. I'm like, oh, you're like a real person. This is like, I was got like a family. And
right before I got to that, like when they were talking about they had a son who worked for the Nazis, I was like, wait a second, is it him? I don't remember. And then it was. And like seeing Engle from the outside, where they just see her as this like sad secretary girl. They call her like the secretary slave girl or whatever, where like Julie saw her as like this like vicious woman, you know, like seeing the opposite side of it is really cool.
I love the part where Maddie's like, you didn't even give her any cigarettes. And she's like, what are you talking about? I spent like half my salary on cigarettes for that girl. And I love the part too where Maddie is having like a rendezvous with Engle for the first time, and she like drops the lipstick. And she forgets that her character isn't supposed to understand English. So there's a moment of like, oh my gosh, what if? Would you take them both from us?
Oh my gosh.
I also, chats like these are always extra hard because we all just love so much of it.
The new topic. Oh, we all love that part too. Okay, great.
Yeah. I'm curious. So, when you were listening to the audiobook, did any of the like extended descriptions of the holding cell and stuff stand out to you, or was that like more of a surprise in the second part?
More of a surprise in the second part, I think. Because I went through it so quickly. I was just so pulled into the story. I don't know if I absorbed as much as I could. Like, I'm sure I'll pick up more stuff on like a second. I'll probably read it the second time to get a different version of it. But it was a really good audiobook experience because like both the girls' voices were really well done. I did know they were going to switch points of view because there were 2 narrators listed, so I knew something was coming. But then they did do what's his name? when he reads the letter in between the two parts. So briefly I thought that, oh, maybe that was the second narrator, because I didn't really look at the names. I thought it was like, oh, no, that's a whole different girl.
Yeah.
So,
I do remember thinking, like, reading it the first time, like, you're getting towards the end of Julie's part, but you don't know it's the end of Julie's part, and you're like, there's a lot of book left, and, like, she seems to be, like, what's going to happen next?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that being a big surprise when I, like, flipped the page, and, like, Maddie was alive, and, like, we got her part of the story, because I had no idea. Which I'm glad she was alive.
Yeah.
Also, I love the scene, like, I marked it at the very beginning, because I just, like, remember it being one of my favorite scenes the first time, too, is, like, that scene where they meet for the first time, and, like, there's, like, the German pilot who, like, thinks he's over France, but he thinks he's crossed the channel, but he's only crossed the Thames, like, and he's still in England. I don't know, I love that scene so much, but, like, I don't know, I think, like, it really is, like, such a good, like, I guess, like, a meet cute, even, like, for the two main characters. Like, that it's this whole thing where, like, it's the two of them, like, using their greatest strengths to, like, solve this problem. And, like, I don't know, I just love that scene.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like the chaos of war, which I always kind of enjoy, things like that. Where they're like, we gotta find somebody who speaks German.
Like, it personalized the war, though, as well. Like, it didn't feel like this big epic conflict so much as this thing that was really happening to these characters, which was nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that it always keeps it on, like, a small scale, which I think is an important thing in war books.
And particularly a book like this where, like, none of these people were real people. Like, the war was a real thing. But even, like, most of she has, like, a little thing in the back that's, like, about the history. And, like, most of these places, even if the names were names of real places, she put them in slightly different spots, or she had, like, barracks there when there weren't any barracks. And
she, like, completely made up names of a lot of things. Like, Ormay isn't even a real city in France.
Yeah, I like, Googled it. She's like, what actually happened there? And then there's a Wikipedia page saying, like, this is a city in Code Name Verity.
She's basically Julie.
She says that. She's like a certain unreliable narrator, I made up proper nouns.
Yeah. And after meeting her in person, too, I could see very much how she would have a lot of Julie in her. She seems very adventurous.
Even though she's a pilot like Maddie.
Yeah.
That is, like,
which I find so interesting.
I know, she's so cool. And, like, that's one of the things, like, I wouldn't even call it, like, a complaint or a downside of the book, but is, like, one of the difficult things of the book is sometimes I didn't understand what they were talking about because it went so much into, like, military stuff. Like, I don't know, talking about, like, all the words that they use. I'm like, I don't know what these things are. Like, the terminology, and, like, when they go, really deep into talking about the planes or, like, the, like, military structure or, like, the missions that go on, I didn't always understand what was going on, but it didn't hang me up too bad.
So this is where Matt is super helpful. Like, super helpful. We've got Michael on languages and Jared on health sciences. Matt can do World War II like nothing. Every couple chapters, I'm like, what is this thing?
I thought it was interesting in the very end of the book, in her little author's note thing, she talked about how even if it wasn't real, she wanted it to be probable. And she talked in particular about the pens and how
she looked up, like, when ballpoint pens.
And I had this moment of, like, oh, that's why you kept talking about the pens. I didn't understand why I should care so much about the pens.
Because, she wanted to give them ballpoint pens so they wouldn't be running out of ink, so she had to look up when they were invented. And it turned out they'd just been invented, so she could only give one to Maddie as, like, a prototype. I also love Jamie. He's, like, my favorite secondary character. He's so great.
Have any of you guys read Rose Under Fire? Okay. There's a little bit of Maddie and Jamie in Rose Under Fire.
Makes me so happy. I have to read it.
Yeah, I didn't care as much for Rose Under Fire as I did for Code Name Verity. I guess I just didn't connect with the character as much, and the plot, like, it all happens in, like, a concentration camp and in, like, the court hearings following and stuff. So I guess it's a little less action-packed. But anytime Maddie and Jamie came up, I was like, you guys, hug!
I'm sure I will read it eventually. I've heard it's a lot more brutal though, because of the obvious concentration camp element. But
yeah, I don't know. I feel like Codename Verity doesn't get enough credit for how dark it is as well. Because I mean, she's getting tortured and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like it was that much darker necessarily. It's just harder to think about because you see like the more global scale of the war basically.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I've been meaning to read it for forever and I just haven't gotten to it.
yeah. And like at least in Codename Verity, it's like Julie's a spy, Maddie's a pilot. You kind of know they all asked to be where they ended up. Not like completely 100%, but like they knew what they were signing up for.
Yeah,
right.
Whereas
that's true.
people in the concentration camps did not.
Yeah. So yeah, you know that like as bad as what Julie went through, like she was trained for it, and she always knew it was a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the switch that both of them had when they were listing their fears. That both of them were like, "How stupid was I to be afraid of growing old?"
Yeah.
Yeah. And that like I liked that Julie adds the cold to hers. Like she takes it from Maddie, and Maddie gets rid of the cold.
And doesn't she add heat?
Yeah, she does. Because the explosives are like underneath her in the barn, and there's no way she could get out if they caught fire. Yeah.
Yeah. So good. And all the parts where Julie's talking about, like, there's one line where she says, like, I desperately want to grow old.
Yeah.
And it like tears your heart out because you're like, are you gonna do this? Are you gonna make her not grow old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I also like I love the letter at the very end from Julie's mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's like, don't let me lose both of you. Like,
Oh.
I got goosebumps.
Me too.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like it would have been easy to create conflict for them, like by having her family pissed or something.
Yeah.
Right.
But it didn't go there, and it seemed very in character to go there.
Yeah.
So, the tragic ending, Maddie shooting Julie to save her.
Do we have to talk about it?
Can the rest of this chat just be us making up our own fan fiction of them both getting out?
Yeah. Gosh, what an awful decision. What a terrible thing to do to your characters.
For real.
I liked how they handled it though, and like Julie getting to figure out that Maddie was still alive, and the groundwork they laid for how she told her that that's what she wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that you got that like great moment where she like hears Maddie crying and like recognizes her voice, and so there's like that second that Maddie sees Julie looking like herself again, so she'll like at least always have that to remember.
Yeah.
My feels.
It's just so sad.
Yeah.
And that's when I was listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that is not the way that I wanted the story to end. Like I read it and I was like, who would write this? Why are you making me live through this?
Yeah.
I didn't see it coming, like, at all.
Yeah, I didn't either. Reading through it a second time, there was a lot of foreshadowing that that's what was going to happen.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah, a ton. Just like the whole Kiss Me Hardy is brought up like several times throughout her entire narrative.
Yeah, and then like right before we started the chat, the last part of the book I read is where like they think like it's possible Julie could have been killed when the French girl was killed, but like Maddie's like, I know she isn't really dead. And Maddie says, I won't believe she's dead until I hear the shots myself and see her fall. And you're like,
no. It hurts inside.
Yeah, like I actually had to like double back a bit of like, what did that actually just happen? Like I was so engrossed in it, like there was still a chunk of the book left, so I didn't think this would be like the end, and then it just happens and it's done and that's it.
Yeah. Oh. Killer last words, though. She struggled earlier in the book with thinking about, like, how she didn't have anything good to say for her last words. And, like, even though they were technically someone else's words, it, like, matched her self and her situation so well. I just loved it.
Yeah.
Even though,
She
like,
had to go.
yeah. For a second, once the prisoners started fighting back, I thought that that was how they were going to get her out. Was all the prisoners fighting back, and she was going to escape, and there'd be a great hug.
I had a moment of hope before, like, I was completely crushed. I was like, everything's going to be okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
I also like that the book doesn't just end there, that, like, there's still a lot of book left. Because I feel like a lot of books lately just, like, end really quickly, which I don't always enjoy. And so I like that there's still a lot of, like, Maddie dealing with it and getting home, and, like, yeah, the story's not just over when Julie's story is over.
Yeah. I'm particularly not a fan of when authors kill off a character and then don't spend any time, really. There's just, like, an epilogue or something. And, like, I know it sucks writing grieving characters, and sometimes it's hard reading them, but I felt like that was done so well in this book, with, like, her, when she realizes it's getting, like, too dark, switching to Fly the Plane Maddie, and, like, keeping pushing forward. I thought it balanced things out really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh. Every time I read that ending, I get, like, super bummed out, though, because it's, like, you relate to the characters, and you see, like, your own friendships in their friendship, and then you have to, like, have this awful moment of thinking of, like, could I do that if I had to? And it's like, no, no.
Yeah.
Not like this. Never like this.
Also, I love the original cover a lot. Can we talk about how great the cover is? It's so cool.
Yeah. It's had a lot of covers.
It has. But even, like, how it even has, like, her writing on it, and, like, that's on, like, the, like, part in between the two parts. Like, there's, like, a page that has, like, and it's actually, like, her writing. Like, I was, like, trying to read it, and it's the part where she's talking about, like, the French girl's bare feet and stuff. Like,
yeah, mine has that too. Not on the cover, but
yeah, it's towards the beginning of the book. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I love this cover, and I find it very beautiful, and I would love to have a cover this pretty one day, but I don't think it matches the tone of the book as well as the hands.
It's true.
And I don't care much for the one where it's the like, profile of the face.
Yeah.
I can do without that one. One of the things I'm always in awe of are the details that go into writing a historical novel.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's way more intimidating than, like, fantasy or sci-fi, because you have to be so, like, you have to research so much.
Yeah.
It was like you have to be so accurate, but you also have to, like, know that you can't be 100% accurate because you're writing fiction. Like, and, like, finding that balance, and knowing that there will always be people who are like, that's not possible, or that's not true, and you're like, I'm making it up. It's a fiction. It's fiction. Like,
yeah. Have any of you guys ever tried writing anything historical?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I just finished writing a historical short story for class.
How did you do that? What time period? Tell us everything.
It takes place in 1855.
Okay.
And I had to do so much research, like internet, books. I went to, like, 3 different history professors at my school to talk to them about it.
Whoa.
Just to make sure that, like, I got all the information that I needed. And I still don't think I executed the story well enough. But That's
revisions.
okay. Yeah, that's future Desiree's problem.
Yeah.
See, it's like every time I read a book like this or like Wolf by Wolf, I'm always like, that would be so cool. And then I think about it for 5 minutes and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No.
I'll just wait another 20 years when the 90s feels like it's that long ago, and I'll write that. You know, bust out all that old NSYNC knowledge. Put it to good use. You know, Stranger Things style.
Yes. I do that. And I feel like World War II is a difficult one, even though it's done a lot. Like it's a very, I don't know, there's a lot of sensitive things in it. You know, I mean, whole groups of people were killed. You know, like so it's a very hard time to write about and do it like right and do it in like a sensitive way and all of that.
One of the things I did struggle with was I had a hard time getting into this book at first, even though like the first sentence, like I am a coward, and her voice and everything is so compelling. Since so much of it is technically backstory, I think I struggled at first. Like, okay, so what's happening now?
Yeah.
Are you gonna die?
Yeah. And I know definitely until Maddie and Queenie meet is a difficult like section to read of like all her backstory. You're like, okay, so Maddie likes planes. Like, when does the story start?
And it's like you said before, a lot of plane descriptions. And I don't know much about planes. Like in my head, every plane during World War II is the plane on the cover of this book. So
yeah.
I know that's not true, and I should just research more. But yeah, this book had so many quotable parts. Like when she says, like, it's like falling in love, meeting your best friend. And there's the kiss me hearty. And there's one more I marked down. I can't remember it now. So many quotable things. Her writing is so beautiful. I felt like it like walked the line of like accessible, you know, like teen voice and like very literary.
Yeah, it's like it never feels like too prosy, but like it's still like really beautiful writing.
Yeah. Oh, Maddie and Julie. I love that we got so many names for Julie before we actually got her real name.
Yeah.
When we first started talking, it took me a minute to actually like, which character did I like better? What were their names?
Yeah. I know it's always easier to think of her as Queenie than Julie, I think.
Yeah.
Because that's what she introduces herself as.
And the fact that she just like holds on to her name like the French girl. As like power, basically.
Yeah. Even though they know her name, she like holds on to it.
Yeah.
Although I'm not like completely, I guess maybe she told them her name like when they were torturing her or something, because I don't know how they know her name otherwise, because she had Maddie's papers. So she must have told them at the very beginning. Oh yeah, because they do say, Maddie says in her part, Maddie talks about how like, of course they know Julie's name by now, because that's like, with the Geneva Convention, that's the first thing you do when you're taken is you like tell them your name and rank. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, she would have told them that.
But she never writes it.
At the very end.
It's a very long name.
It is, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'd go by Julie too. I don't remember how did the lady come about at the front of it?
Oh, it's just, she just says that that's what she put on her dance cards. Because she is, like, she's from, like, royalty, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. Her family lives in a castle. Because
like I had skimmed that part or something.
And like World War II is kind of like that. I think they mentioned it in the book. Like it was like after World War II that a lot of like class structure kind of like fell away in England. So like before that, she still would have she would have been considered Lady Julia and like all this stuff.
Yeah.
Her family was like still considered nobility.
Except her. Yeah, at the end, her mom says she's Lady Beaufort Stewart.
Yeah, because she's like descended from like Mary Queen of Scots.
So fancy.
Yeah. And Wallace and Macbeth and all these people. All these famous Scottish people. I love like every time they call her English and she gets angry about it.
I once, in a class that I taught in college, I had an English student who I called British once, and he got very upset by it. He was very offended that I would generalize like that and not call him English. I felt really bad, and now I try really hard not to mess it up.
I love like, because she's always telling them like, I'm not English, I'm a Scotsman, and like I love when she's talking about like the it's like the German that she interrogates that like almost chokes her, and Maddie sees the bruises later, and she's talking about that interrogation and how like she's pretending to be a German woman and he calls her like an English whore or whatever, and she's like uses like her real anger to be like, I'm not English, don't call me English. So Julie.
I need to read it again.
It's
but I'm also not reading.
Yeah.
But also I have so many other things to read.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In the front of the book where they've got all of the like praise from all these other reviewers and authors and stuff, Beth Revis said that it was a book that once she finished it, she immediately flipped back to page 1 to start reading it again, and it definitely feels like one of those books where it's like I need to see the whole story.
Yeah, it's like now that I know everything, I need to know how it all worked. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm very curious about like how she wrote it, like what her process was for it.
Oh my gosh, I just realized that like, so there's like a quote right before part 1 that's from the like SOE Secret Operations Manual, Methods of Passive Resistance, and it's like passive resistors must understand that they are as important as saboteurs, and you're like, oh, it told you like right there that she was like making everything up.
Yeah.
This is what happens. You don't pay attention to the quotes at the front of your book.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was like taught to do that, to like pretend she was like complying, you know.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this one of the other quotes is when she's like, "We make a sensational team."
Yeah.
Like, I love it. The way she talks is always so Lady Julia.
Yeah. I know. I know. I love the way she talks. It's so great. And I love that she always like talks herself up in a way. Like even though she talks down on herself with like how she's a traitor now, but whenever she talks about herself in the past, she like talks herself up so much. Like that was part of why Engle didn't realize she was Queenie, is because she like flattered herself so much. I love it so much.
Yeah. Oh gosh, and the part where Maddie's flying home and Jamie puts his hand through the thing and like rests it on her shoulder, just like Julie did. My heart.
Yes. Oh, so good. The Wallace Stewart siblings.
Yeah.
Or Beaufort Stewart siblings.
Yeah.
Wallace comes before Beaufort, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're so great.
And like there's hardly any like romance or anything in the book at all. Mm-hmm. But then every time at the end that they are together, I'm like, I need you to be together and mourn together and fall in love and have children and name one of your daughters Julia.
It's so true. I'm always like, if she can't be with Julie, at least she can be with her brother.
Yeah.
But I do love Jamie. He's super sweet. He's like taking care of all those little like orphan kids the first time you meet him, and you're like, oh.
Oh.
That's where all the like Peter Pan tie-ins with them like hurt my soul.
Mrs. Darling always keeping the windows open. You're like, and she even says that in her letter at the end. She's like, "I'll keep the window open." And you're like, "Oh." That's another reason she has to marry Jamie, is because Lady Beaufort Stewart thinks of her as a daughter already. Which is perfect. They already love her.
Yeah. Peter Pan was another one of the fairy tales that, like, you could see a lot of parallels to. Yeah. For sure. Like, she's very much, Julie is very Peter Pan-ish.
Yeah. And Maddie's very much like Wendy dragged along.
She's like, what am I doing here? How did this happen?
And that's also, they use that as like her like code name for that mission when they go, is they call her Wendy.
We've loved a lot of things about this book tonight. Like I mentioned earlier, whenever we love books pretty unequivocally, the chats always tend to run shorter. Did anyone have any like final thoughts about this book?
Amazing. Makes me sad.
Yes.
I've always kind of loved like YA historical fiction, and it's definitely one of the best ones. So good.
Yeah.
I wish I'd read it sooner, because I could have reread it so much by now.
I tried. Yeah, so definitely read this book if you have not yet. Even though we spoiled a lot for you, it's still
worth
even if you know the ending, it's amazing. Code Name Verity by Elizabeth Wein, W-E-I-N. She's also written Rose Under Fire. Is it called Black Dove, White
Raven? Maybe
Raven. Black Dove, White Raven.
It's two birds and one's black and one's white. That's all I remember.
Yeah, and I think it's reverse the colors that you would think they're supposed to be.
I think you're right.
But yeah, she's got a lot of books. They're amazing. She's a very nice person, which makes me like her books even more, because it's like we got to meet her and she treated us so special, even though we were just like one of a long line of fangirls.
Great.
So definitely read it. Read all her works. Be sure to tune in next week. We're going to be having a write-in, I believe,
Yeah.
Writing all the words. We're going to be so productive. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you are not subscribed to us, and we will see you tomorrow with a video, obviously, but also next week in our live chat. Bye!
Bye.
Bye.